I'll be honest, I'm not, opening any of these files unless I can't
Yeah.
figure out who's name.
Really?
I don't have air, it was wired into a different server, or direct into the server, so we don't have public Wi-Fi. But we do have Zoom. Yes.
This is being recorded,
It is.
It is.
so that the recording can be accessed.
And it's being live streamed. It's
Yeah.
just that we don't have public Wi-Fi for people to use in the room.
You can use your,
I use my hotspot.
yeah, you use your hotspot, you can use your cellular.
I have to use my. What's going on? Better wait for the party.
Thank you. Give me one second.
Perfect. Let me know.
Okay, ready, thank you.
Hello, everybody. I call this meeting of the New Shoreham Town Council to order. Today's Friday, April 12th, 2024. It is 12:17. Thank you, Millie and Tom and others for helping us to get through our technology challenges today. And thank you, everybody who's here in person and streaming for your patience. Our broadband was down. The first item today is to discuss and act on budget line amendments to the fiscal year 2025 budget. Mary Ann and Amy, do you have anything you'd like to?
Sure. Let me
First.
just provide a quick update, on a couple of things, and also make a recommendation to the council and the folks in general. At the last budget conversation, we do have some detailed information here as it relates to the capital budget. I specifically would like to talk about the police dispatch area and first. As you know, we had budgeted $100,000 for the much needed physical improvements to meet what's called UL specification. Chief Dean is also joining us today. He wasn't at a meeting on Tuesday. He was tied up in a subpoena and in court regarding a case that goes back about a year ago now. So the funding of the $100,000, $30,000 is for ballistic panels for the exterior and interior walls around the windows. $40,000 for ballistic glass over the exterior and interior windows. $20,000 for what's called a pass-through drawer for serving walk-up businesses. $5,000 to reconfigure the exterior door with the camera and electronic latch. That way the dispatch can operate that. And lastly is $5,000 to install a panic button. The panic button usually is located under the desk, and dispatch can sound it anytime they find that they're in need to have police come right away. That totals $100,000 for dispatch. I'll pause at this point to see if anyone has any questions in regards to that particular work that we're looking to get done in the upcoming fiscal 25.
Any questions for Mary Ann?
Do we have any idea,
Yeah.
do we have any idea on a timeline?
Well, once the budget's approved, then they'll start moving forward with specifications and RFPs if they need to get RFPs, and also get folks involved with the UL specification to get involved and work with the staff and the police chief.
Thank you.
Yeah, I was gonna ask about the RFP, so just for my education, so the project's $100,000. So that in itself is there a dollar value that has to go out for bid? And then since you've broken it up into parts, does that fold differently? So if the project's 100, but you have 5 different pieces to it, is there a limit on the bid?
So anything in construction that's over $10,000 under Rhode Island general laws has to go for bid.
Okay.
So it depends on, you can't split up a bid package or the work to avoid the bidding. So in a case like this, I would think the bulk of it may be just one package. It depends on what we're doing, what we're getting. So I see this as a potentially being one bid package
Okay.
going out.
Thank you.
And we'll look on the MPA, which is the master price agreement, which may have some contractors or something like that already in place.
It's sort of a side question on that. How long has it been 10,000?
I'm sorry?
Do you know how long it has been 10,000, the limit? The
Oh.
limit?
That goes back to when they first implemented that statute, which goes back a number of years. There's been pending legislation almost every single year in the past 5 to 6 years. 10,000 for construction is a drop in the bucket now.
That was my question.
Yes.
Can I, just so that I'm clear, what we're talking about here is basically hardening that room so that it's bulletproof, it has a panic button, and the dispatchers now have the opportunity to say, "Bzz, you can
Help.
come in."
Yeah.
And you can come in, right?
Chief, can you address that? That is, the front door will be such that they'll be buzzed in, correct?
Yes, to the
Yeah.
front door.
Great, terrific. You don't have to get up, Paul.
Well, I have a couple questions for you though. What about the back door? To the meeting room and then from the meeting room into the area, wouldn't that need to be buzzed?
The back door through the meeting room, that's a combination lock. And the door that actually swings into dispatch right now is lockable. It locks. As soon as you close it, it locks and you can't get in from the outside. So it's just more the access door in the front foyer to prevent somebody from getting in through the front.
So also, what could we do to limit the reasons why the public would even need to come into that building? Like, do those bathrooms need to be available in the summer when there are public bathrooms right down the hill? Or do people need to enter the building to get a fire permit, pay a parking ticket? Like, could we limit the number of reasons why people come in the building?
We could eventually, but right now we are not in a position to do so. Most every police department that you go into the front lobby. It is kind of like a sealed foyer and you do have access to restrooms. And a lot of them use them, especially during the winter time and a little bit colder climates, as warming centers, places for the homeless
Right.
and other people to be able to
Right.
go and have access, which means they would need to have access to a restroom. So long-term, I know, we talked about fire permits and parking tickets and all those such things. Eventually, yes, we would like to get them all done online. Is that doable for this year before the summer? It's not. It's too big of a step or too big of a process with many steps involved to get to that point prior to.
Any other questions specifically on the dispatch?
Well,
Oh, I'm sorry, Molly, I didn't know you were still on.
too, this isn't necessarily for you, but like the other night when we heard this presentation, it was the majority of the funding was for planning, for like coming up with a plan. Now it's changed and it's actual hardening of the space. So what we're hearing today is different than what we heard a couple days ago. Obviously, I like this better, but
We worked on, Mary Ann and Tom and Mike worked on actually getting some hard numbers for us so that it could be presented to you in
That was what we
a
asked.
much
yeah,
more, a better fashion when you can sit there and look at what are these things going to cost?
great. Well, I appreciate the work because this is a better
Yeah,
plans.
it's
Thank
well
you.
done. Thank you. Mary Ann, more?
So now we're going to move on to a couple other items. I want to talk about specifically about the saltwater pumper and also with the North Light and then also the landfill, the transfer station budget of 150,000, North Light of 200,000, and also the pumper. So what I would like to recommend to the council is an additional $250,000 for the pumper. We heard from the fire department that they would like to have this pumper budgeted so that they can buy it this fiscal year. And as we all know, we saw what happened this past summer with the Harborside fire. And we know the challenges that the fire department has as it relates to water. We do not have much water availability in the downtown area. There's limited hydrants. The water system for the town also has limited water.
Isn't it also cheaper? Sorry to interrupt, but
Right,
the sooner we order it, the
because
cheaper it is.
salt water,
If you can
And-
use the word cheap in this context,
cheaper and
less expensive. Thank you.
less expensive, yes. And
Yes.
Chief Hobie went through the specific numbers as to how much water can be pumped, what will happen, how much we will have in order to fight a fire downtown. We all know, we've said this once, we've said it once, we've said it 100 times. We were very fortunate with the fire that we had at the harbor side. The weather was with us, the wind was with us, and we were very fortunate that we were able to get the mutual aid here as quick as possible.
Can I just ask if we're, as long as we're on the pump, does this contemplate a larger tent so that this gets stored inside? Because I actually think the most consistent comment we had was around making sure that this thing isn't
So
exposed to the
what
elements.
Tom has been exploring with Mike Shea is the tent that they're looking for, the ladder truck, and to find a way that they can include the pump in that. Keep in mind, we have a lead time on this pump.
Yes,
and
right.
so we
Yeah, good
have that
point.
to
Yeah,
consider, so
yeah,
it's-
yeah.
You know, it won't happen overnight.
When you say a tent, what exactly do you mean?
I have a little tent fatigue from downtown right this week, so. it's landing well.
Well,
That's why I'm asking for a
What,
definition of
what
it.
is the tent?
so we'll let Mike Shea and Tom Rism have a meet with Howell on a weekly basis to discuss this project. So I'll let the two of them discuss it. I have been part of that. And I have addressed the tent with land use attorney. Trust me, we're on that one. And hopefully it'll be resolved soon. You don't like the circus? huh?
Tent fatigue.
Yes.
So a couple of weeks ago, Howell and the chief came to me and said that they want to create a temporary enclosure to house ladder 1 when the new ladder 2 gets here in now May. We looked at a couple.
I'm sorry, excuse me, you mean next month?
Yes. So the new ladder that has been 2 years, a year and a half in the coming is finally getting here. I think it may soon be on its way to Massachusetts. I don't want to speak for the fire department, but they're not here, so I'll tell you what I know. And that is that it's headed to Massachusetts for hardware installation on the chassis, and then it will get here a couple of weeks later, and that'll be early May, is what we're thinking. When that gets here, it'll displace ladder 1 in the existing firehouse. And that was powers that be suddenly occurred to them, they had nowhere to put it. So we spent quite a lot of time looking at the Coast Guard station, the power company, the town garage, any building that might be able to house it, and not one of them could because there's a lot of ladder that sticks over the front and makes it too long for any of those garage bays. So we then went to Plan B, which was a temporary structure until they build a new firehouse. And that is a what we call a tension fabric structure, the one we looked at. I have pictures, but they're at the other end of the building. And it's basically a steel frame hoop, like a Quonset hut. Looks like a plastic wrap Quonset hut. And right now it's 20 feet by 40 feet long. The truck is 36 feet. And it's 20 feet wide with a 12-foot door in the middle. Just yesterday, Chris called me and he said, could we make it 22 feet and park this pumper next to it? And I said, sure, we haven't ordered it yet. But he said, as soon as I give you the order to order it, can you do so? And I said, I would. There at the meeting last Monday, 4 days ago, they had a vote at the fire department to pay for it out of fire department funds. So that's why you don't see it in the budget here. That will get it, that'll fast track it. And that will go somewhere on the fire department site supposedly, and it'll house ladder 1 and this pumper when it arrives, which could be, I think, a year away. But now's the time to build a building that would house both.
Gotcha.
I think Tom's out getting the pictures of it if you care. That's all I have.
Oh, thanks.
Mary Ann, Just a couple of questions on the fire pump. Are we going to make sure or exhaust every option for housing this piece of equipment?
I'm sorry, guys, I'm sorry,
Say again, please.
Have we exhausted every option for storing this trailer mounted pump
Well, I have.
inside?
I have. I don't know of anywhere else that we could look. Mike and Howell and I drove around thinking of all the buildings that might do it. We, as you know, I'm sure you know, we, at one time, we were gonna put a Butler building up at the power company and house it there. Against, the rent, we would do something with the building after the garage was no longer needed, but then when it became a temporary structure, the power company lost their appetite for it. We looked at other lots, town-owned properties, where we could put it, and the general consensus was if it wasn't near the firehouse where they could start it once a week and, check on it, it would fall into disrepair. So they really wanted it on the site, and that worked out. I mean, right now we can do that. Yeah. It's not really a tent, but we'll call it that.
Could we come up with
A different name? or-
Temporary building.
Yeah,
Have a temporary shelter is what we're actually calling it.
okay, as long as, yeah, I think tent people think something else.
Yes. Will do.
Particularly when we're in a state of tent fatigue.
It ain't just the Malfords.
You coined a new term, Molly.
Yeah, just if any of you are interested in the durability of this thing, it is rated for our wind rating, which is 130 miles an hour, and you see them all over the state at salt sheds. There's one right at the Rotary in.
Oh, right. Yeah. That's a good, that's a good
No, I-
visual reference. Yes.
And Marianne, the chief touched on the ISO rating. Have we looked in to see if, in fact, that would lower some of the insurance rates in the downtown area?
Having a second ladder?
No, the pump.
We just got a ISO rating, didn't we, Mike? The insurance rating, didn't we just complete that?
That's a good question. I haven't even thought about that.
We just
aspect of it.
completed and it's done every 10 years, is it 10 years?
Okay, well, I won't talk about vendors. The chief mentioned a couple different vendors, but I think it's a priority that we set, which whoever we get the pump from, that it is an actual fire apparatus and it's,
Meets the NFA, whatever.
yeah, I don't want to say a vendor's name, but
Yeah.
it fits all those
Yep.
NFPA standards.
Yeah.
And you said that the power company said they turned down this request?
No, sorry, no, there was an offer made before I got involved for a permanent structure to be put on power company property. And there was some, they worked out some sort of deal where they would get use of that property and when they no longer needed the building, they would just turn it over to the power company. And that was fine when it was a steel building with proper foundation and all that, but the power company didn't want a temporary structure. So that deal fell apart.
I believe,
This has a 10 to 15 year life, so it's not very.
so maybe we can have the manager look into it. I realize it's private property, but the power company didn't want this due to the fact that they were worried about this tent blowing into the transformers or the power transmission lines over at that site.
At the location they had was where the fuel tanks used to be, right? But it could work up where, on the plateau where the Christmas trees go too. It's only 20 by 40.
Mhm.
But not my God.
Thank you. Marianne.
So what we're recommending doing after speaking with staff and going through the budget in light of the fire department and the pumper is specifically the North Lake. Currently, what's in the budget is $200,000. We currently are looking to do $80,000 work with the work of this coming fiscal year.
Which is
We
already
have,
budgeted.
Accor Restoration, who has done a number of restorations. They did the South Lighthouse. They've done some work on the North Lighthouse. The bulk of this work that he will be doing this coming year, and the funds are available. We bid this out. We've gone through the out process, is to weather tight the tower. Once that gets completed, and it's going to be done this fiscal year, originally it was supposed to start last fiscal year, however, this Accor got behind on other projects, so it's coming forward with this project. As the council knows, we've been in active negotiation with Orsted. And the project that they see that fits them funding us, helping us with funding is the North Light. Included in the funding of this North Light through Orsted will also include planning. What we heard at the meeting on Monday, whatever day it was, it's becoming a blur right now, is what will the lighthouse be used? Do we need an innkeeper? Do we not need an innkeeper? How's best to attract tourism out there? How do we get people out there? How do we get staff? What is the best way to staff it? It has been open since pre-COVID. And part of that will be the planning of that and also the funding associated. So, this is a historical lighthouse. It's a beacon for the island. And I think we need to get the long-range plan in place for that facility. It is much needed work through no fault of anyone. The work has been delayed, and we haven't talked about it. What we're doing with this budget finally is addressing some long-term needs that the town needs to address. And I think it's important that we do realize that. Also,
Just ask a question.
Yeah.
So, and this probably predates you, Marion. Were there ever discussions, I'm kind of looking at Martha probably, about an apartment in the building and having that? And would the idea be, it would be a lighthouse keeper, but it also supplies year-round housing? Is that?
There were a couple of different things. One was have an apartment, the third floor, you've been in it, right? Because the third floor is kind of massive, which is very misleading, but it is. Have an apartment up there, I think this is the most recent iteration, and have rental space on the second floor. If anybody's familiar with lighthouse associations across the country, how to put this, lighthouse fans are very passionate, dedicated, unique breed. The Rose Island Light in the bay is this small lighthouse. It's on a basically rock. You have to work if you're going to go there. You have to bring everything you want. You have to pay. There's a waiting list for it. They've been extraordinarily successful, and that's the kind of to me the extreme of this sort of thing. It's people want to stay in a lighthouse, and we've also had a lot of people over time. There are a lot of people who talk about they'd like to live in a lighthouse. A lot of that's a dream, but there are we've all talked to people who seriously would find that an extraordinarily attractive place to live. It depends on the person. Some people love to live at the cut down by the Coast Guard station. Other people might not like having fishing out their door.
So the idea here would be to reduce the North Light to 0 pending the process that we have ongoing with Orsted.
That's correct.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I forgot. We'd still be maintaining the museum on the first floor.
And the $80,000 you're talking about with Avcor, is that what it is? Avcor?
Yes,
Is already in the budget.
it's
So
already in the
that-
budget. It
right.
runs from the year that we're closing.
Yep.
Yes.
And they're
So it's not like we're stopping work on the North Light.
No.
and they're the South Light guys.
They did the Southeast Lighthouse,
And
yes.
they are extraordinarily good.
Yeah.
They're beyond, but again, lighthouse people and people who work on lighthouses have a particular passion.
Yes, oh, sorry, Marianne, yes,
I
please.
didn't know if you want to wait for Molly. The additional $50,000 funds, I'm working with Tom and Mike, relates to the transfer station. We had budgeted $150,000 in there, reduced it by $50,000 The remaining funds of $100,000 will be for relocating the existing generator from the medical center to the transfer station. And $80,000 will be for the study of the transfer station to improve, reconstruct, improve, redesign that transfer station. And also take into consideration some of the composting and trashologies and things of that nature that we are now discussing as we move forward with transferring trash. And bringing that, again, that facility up to the 21st century. Again, it's much needed, much overdue. I think, again, I hate to keep saying this, but we're at a time in Block Island where we really need to start addressing a lot of infrastructures and moving forward. I think we're seeing that. We've seen it with broadband. We've seen it with the, $10.4 million with the school. So I think we're on a good path here. We just need to continue down this path.
So we're talking about moving the transfer station 150 to 100. And that would be for planning and design / engineering, so that next year we come back for next fiscal year with a plan and design for the modern transfer station
And a price.
and a price. Okay.
Does the transfer station at this point not have a generator? So this would be a new thing?
No, it does not.
Okay.
And we're repurposing the one at the medical center.
Thank you for the work you guys put into this. I appreciate it. I think it
Can the, just when you're talking about that generator, can the old generator from the medical center be moved to the,
That's the one we're moving.
Yeah.
That's the one we're talking
sorry,
about.
I missed that.
I think you were
Yes,
indisposed.
exactly.
That is the generator, obviously. That one has been inside all its life and has been maintained and is in very good shape. And we didn't want to get rid of it, and we
Hmm.
looked around in other departments and where it could be used, and that was the best fit for it. So, he does not have room inside, so the intention is, a cement pad outside and, probably a lean-to cover over it. But it was worth keeping.
Yeah, okay,
Cool.
thanks. Sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry, Doug, I didn't see your hand. I'm sorry about that. Come up.
Not so much comments on the budget, but the costs of the studies. You want North Lake improvements, 50 grand. I don't know what they pay. If you're paying somebody $100 an hour, that's 500 hours to study it and just say, hey, you should do this.
So, yeah, I mean, just so I'm not disagreeing with you, but I just want to, the money, the money, what's that? Yeah, I am, Mike. The 50,000 for the Northlight plan would be from Orsted, not from town expenditure. I just wanted to make that clear.
Let's say it comes from Orsted. Maybe it should cost you 20 grand and the other 30 goes into the North Light. That's my point. Doesn't matter where the money's coming from. 50 grand is a lot of money for a study, I think, for that building with all the
Okay.
work that's been done in the past.
Uh-huh.
And then the other one is the transfer station. 80 grand. If you pay somebody $200 an hour, that's 400 hours. That's somebody working 10 weeks, 40 hours a week nonstop. I just don't see the money. I'd rather see money like that go fix the building, which needs a lot of work itself. So it just comments on the cost of the study.
Thank you, Doug.
Nothing, no problem with the improvements that you're looking
Yeah,
to do.
no, that's helpful.
Thank you.
So my sense of this planning and studying is that we all are in the all started in the wrong business, which is we should have been planners and studiers, because every time I see one of these estimates come for these things, I'm sort of like, wait, I was in the wrong business. You're right. It's crazy. Go ahead, David.
David Lewis, can I just go back to the police station dispatch center for a minute? Because I have a similar question. The very first line talks about the dire need for doing the physical improvements that are listed, which total $100,000. And that these upgrades will buy some time to design and specify in a UL compliant dispatch center. So I guess my question is, are those uh, 5 items that are listed there for those amounts totaling $100,000, are they shovel ready with no further consultant input? And we can do them all with our current facilities, within our current facilities management? Or does each of those line items have inside it, there's a $30,000 for ballistic panels, for example, have embedded in it enough money to cover whatever outside consultant advice you need?
Tom or Mike or Paul?
They're shaking their head, yes.
Yeah,
Great.
Thank you.
it's hard for that to come across on Zoom and YouTube.
Okay, so is YouTube running?
Yes,
James is on. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. That's.
Which is on? Oh, okay, thanks.
so I don't know whether this is the right place to do this, but what the heck? So I look at the communications number of 80,400, and I would like to reduce that to 40, and here's what I would be contemplating. We would pay the incumbent communications person a stipend or fee to be part-time, and then hire and stipend, or stipend may be the wrong word, an assistant with the idea that this would be in the police budget, with the idea that the incumbent would be doing for a year training and a mind dump on the existing communication system. Because I do worry about sort of over the long term, having one person who knows how this works and how it needs to get fixed, and where the red wires and green wires need to stay away from one another, et cetera, et cetera. I think we're at a point, when this just occurred to me, some of this stuff is really sort of generational investment that we're making here. And we also need to make a shift to make sure that over the long haul, we have, two people, who, know how this, system, works, who are readily available to, particularly to dispatch. And so that was my thought on this communications person. 2 part-timers in the police department.
So where are you dropping it down? I'm sorry.
From
Each of the numbers.
From
David,
80
which
to
line is
40.
this in the police budget?
Keith, can you just clarify, are you moving it over to the police department?
I can't hear.
Well, I think we want
What line? did you-
the communications people to be overseen
dispatch,
by
got
a full-time person. So that was my rationale for the police department. I mean, I think it's all the same people every day. I was just thinking as a budgeting matter.
That'll just fall into the police budget from now on, and there won't be a communication budget. Just
Right.
fall- Okay.
Unless we decide in a year, because we're trying something out here, right? Unless we decide at the end of a year that, I mean, there are a number of things that could happen. One is you decide to build a new fire barn, public safety building, that has a modern dispatch center in it that is frankly more modular. The systems are all moving more toward, as I understand it, sort of plug and play type stuff where you run your diagnostics on a computer, that this is the part that's failing and you plug the new part in. So that's, it could be, we could be on the verge of a different system. And I think this is a way to get, the person who has been doing it, frankly, paid to do it, and get the person who has been doing it to do knowledge and understanding transfer to a new person so that we have 2 people who have keys to the castle.
So
That's up to
can you explain that again?
Yeah,
I'm
it's-
sorry to be sort of obtuse here, but. like,
Sure. So
explain
we have $80,400 for a new communications person in this budget,
In where,
right here,
the two-
under public safety, escalating growth pressures. Right here,
oh, I'm
right here.
doing budget.
It's
Okay, well,
central dispatch,
Yeah, okay.
right? So we're looking
The
at
two lines I
line
can't see.
5104 and line 6900.
Just a quick correction with the document you're looking at. The $60,000 is the salary related stuff. There's an additional
400.
20,400, which is communication operations.
Right.
That needs to stay in. So the reduction, if you're looking to reduce it to 40, I'm assuming you're looking to reduce the 60 by 20 to 40.
yes,
Communication operations is equipment,
Yes,
okay?
and 5104 is the salary line item, and that's the
Right.
one you're looking to.
yes.
For
Thank you.
clarification. Yeah.
And can you go over your logic on that again?
So my logic is right now we have a job in the budget, a new job in the budget, as I understand it. What we know about what we need is that we have an incumbent who has been doing heroic work over the years, who is kind of the only person who knows how this thing works. He, in my opinion, the incumbent should be compensated for the work that he's doing. But also, I think should be expected, if that's the right word, to transfer that knowledge and understanding to sort of the next person or to a person. So my idea would be to have two part-time roles, the incumbent and a new person, with the expectation that the incumbent would basically take the new person on as an apprentice and teach the system to the new person.
So we would be paying the existing person to do the training, and we would be paying the new hire
Yeah.
to be the new hire.
Yeah.
For less than $60,000?
Well, I thought 40 would do it, but I guess what I'm talking about here, Molly, is what is our idea here? Is it to hire a new person in this role, a new full-time person in this role? Or can we do it with two people, what amounts to a technology transfer, a knowledge transfer, and then figure out as the process moves forward on new fire barn, potential new dispatch center, et cetera, how we're going to structure this position.
So Marianne, is communications a full-time job or a part-time job?
I think based on what we're putting forward now, would be more of a stipend part-time environment for next year.
A stipend part-time?
Correct.
I guess I just have to be practical and say, like, where are we gonna find like somebody who understands this sort of job, has the skill set for that sort of job, who's willing to take a part-time stipend job on an island for $20,000. I'm just trying to be practical here. Like, I think our applicant pool might be like very small.
I think our applicant pool is always small. But, I mean, look, I'm just trying to figure out a way to do the essential transfer that we need in a way that maintains the integrity of our system as it exists now. Because I have to say, I do worry about what happens if something happens that we don't foresee.
Right?
Yeah,
Like the lightning strike.
or I don't know, something happens to somebody and we don't have we don't have a guide we can look at to say, when the dispatchers call and say, the system's down, here are the five, here's the hierarchy. You look at number one, you look at number two, you look at number three, you look at number four, and have a person who knows where number one is, where number two is, where number three is, and where number four is. We don't have that right now. We have a person who knows it and does an extraordinary job. But that's a bit of finger crossing that to me presents a bit of a risk.
When would you expect this to be coming online
Well, with the start of the fiscal year.
with a second person as well?
So if we have to advertise and go through that process, you
Yeah.
have easily 90 days.
Oops.
And what has been the town's practice in the past is not try to hire folks in the summer because most of them are extremely
Sure,
busy
yeah.
working. And you advertise in the fall when some folks may not have the jobs that they had, they have seasonal jobs and are available. That's been a practice.
So I'm okay with like the process of having the existing person train a new person. I just don't know whether cutting the pay is the best idea. But
So I wasn't anticipating cutting pay. I was trying to get two part-time people to accomplish what I set out. I'm not wedded to this. I'm just, if we're looking for what would, a lot of the stuff that's in this budget is directional, right? I mean, really, when you sort of boil it all down, a lot of it's directional. It's investments and stuff that's haven't been made that need to be made. And directionally, I think we'd all, is not unique to me, but I think we'd all like to have a couple of people who know how the communication system works and know how to fix it.
And this is transitional and it's not representing 12 months.
Right. Oh, David.
This conversation is beginning to sound like the one we had at the last meeting from which came all of this more detail, adequate detail came out for making the adjustments that you've made to the facilities plan. I think unless I'm wrong, there's only one subject matter expert on what this job really entails, and that's the incumbent, and he's not in the room. And if money were no issue, we probably shouldn't be having this discussion until the job description going forward has been written, at least in terms of a technical requirements. At that point, you know what this is, what the problem is you're trying to solve in terms of staffing. So, I just like to leave you with that thought, if that whatever decision you make around this table today hasn't got a whole lot of knowledge base attached to it, because the incumbent isn't in the room and we don't even know what the job description is. We collectively, if there's anybody that really knows and can verbalize it, they should step up.
Well, except that with all due respect to the incumbent person, we're the one who make policy for the town. And to me, a compelling policy objective would be to have two people know how the radio system works.
And I think that's a worthwhile objective. I don't disagree with that at all. However, you're balancing, you're trying to establish a budget, keep the money in the budget as a placeholder while you go off and do the due diligence. You don't have to spend it, but you do need to have the adequate dollar horsepower behind what your final decision would be. And I'm not saying that you let the incumbent rule the roost, but I think the thing we've learned already today is when stuff is committed to paper, all of a sudden the quality of the input improves dramatically. We've already seen that in the last hour. And I'm suggesting that we need the benefit of the same brain power for this discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, David.
And I will say the person in the role has expressed that he would very much like to have someone to pass the information on to. So,
But we don't have somebody now, I guess, is that's kind of
no,
the,
because like as David pointed out, we don't even have a job description, so we can't have anybody.
okay,
We have to-
it's
we have
fine.
to place- we have
Let's
to have
just,
a
let's just
placeholder.
leave it if that's what people are.
We have to have we have to have some commitment to doing this. And I'm looking at this as a bridge, as a transition, as a placeholder to get something going. This is not going to be accomplished by September. This is going to be started in September, probably.
Great, I withdraw my idea. Either one of you guys. You can fight for it. That'll be more entertaining.
Probably shouldn't say anything, but sometimes you don't know what's out there, who's out there that might want to do this unless they know it's available. There might be somebody out there, if this is available, they might jump on it. Like last year during the fire, Howell had trained one of our former students how to run that aerial drone.
Right, yes,
Very helpful.
yes.
He was very psyched about it afterwards too.
Yeah.
So you don't know until you put it out there. And if nobody's interested, well, then it falls down and you make another plan next year, but you don't know.
We just for the first time say your name and.
Yes,
Yeah.
John Vasquez, West Beach Road.
Hi, John.
Let me just say, I applaud your effort to try to reduce part of the budget, even though it's a small part. And I appreciate your great efforts and energy here that you're doing for the town. I've never been to one of these meetings
Oh.
before.
Welcome.
But I've lived here since 1983, mostly in the summer. But I think you need to give more consideration to what can be cut in the budget.
Mhm.
Now, you're probably aware of the newspaper article announcing a 17-point-something increase in taxes. That's not going well with people who live here and who are not involved in politics. So you need to give consideration to what can be cut, because you may not get that increase.
Mhm. Thank you.
So thank you for.
Thank you
at least
very
looking
much.
at-
Thank you. Terrific. What's next? Anybody have any line item changes they'd like to make?
On the capital budget, are we still, or you want to?
Do whatever.
Well, I'll go back to my two unpopular suggestions that we reduce the contribution to the Early Learning Center to half of their operating budget and level fund the medical center.
Would you like to separate those out into two motions or make one motion?
I'm not even, I'm not even like making it as a motion. I don't know how much appetite anybody has for that, but
So the reduction to the child learning was 6,000?
let me find my math on that.
I do think Molly's point on the early learning, I mean, I'm supportive of that because it does in turn help. Ideally, it helps the incoming class into our school. But there have been comments made that those children aren't prepared when they enter kindergarten, which is a bit of a he said, she said, right? And perception. So I think if we do the cut to the budget, the Early Learning Center should be on point to know they'll get more scrutiny the following year.
I agree with that. I think, I'm actually more than happy to talk about investing even more in the Early Learning Center, but I'd like data. I'd like to have a sense of, and maybe it exists, by the way, but I just haven't seen the, what are the school readiness scores? What are the, I don't have a handle on that. So I would, if Molly were to make this as a motion, I would support it.
Yeah, and then the other piece of that is I understand the school went for a grant
Mhm.
as well for early learning at the maybe age 3 level.
Yeah, the pre-K.
And just making sure we're aligned on how the early learning center is operating, because I'm not quite sure why they wouldn't have gone for the grant. And there's probably an explanation, but I think because it is a fairly large amount of money, percentage wise of their budget, I think Molly's raised a good point that it does need better scrutiny.
Hang on one sec. I'm not sure if I did the math correctly, but I would be talking about cutting that line by $5,892.50, which
So which one?
the preschool, the early learning center, we're currently funding them at $147,785 per year, which is more than half of their operating budget. So just to, I'm not gonna get into like what their testing scores are or anything like that. When we met with them, they haven't run a fundraiser in 4 years. We know that they have run tremendously successful fundraisers in the past. So I don't think that this is doing some incredible harm. I think this is asking the taxpayers to foot a little bit less of the bill. And to ask the preschool to step it up, run a couple fundraisers. I mean, the fire department runs fundraisers. The medical center just finished a tremendous fundraiser. So on our community support page, the other organizations they're helping themselves.
I think you've heard you have the votes to do this, so why don't you make a
Oh.
motion?
Okay, so I'll make a motion then that we reduce that line by $5,892.50.
Is there a second?
Second.
You make an even dollar number.
Oh, you want me to?
Yeah.
What's that?
83. Will you amend your motion to 83?
83. Oh, yeah, sorry. Okay, so 5,893.
So moved. Second, whatever.
Yeah, your second. You amend your second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Ayes have it. Molly?
Well, I mean, the only other, the other idea that I had suggested was to level fund the medical center. So, which would mean level funding them, but just not increasing it by $14,000.
Okay, I would oppose that.
I would oppose that. I would oppose that, especially in light of the fact that they have raised so much money and we're saying to one group, you haven't raised any money, so we're gonna cut you. Well, you've raised millions of dollars, we're gonna level fund you.
Well, no, my primary reason for the preschool is I don't think the taxpayers, when I say we, I mean the taxpayers, I don't think the taxpayers should be funding a non-municipal organization at more than half of their operating costs. It just seems out of line. But
Do you want to put it in a motion?
I can, but if everybody's not on board for that, like I said the other night, this is not the hill I'm gonna die on. So whatever you guys think.
I think it followed suit on the same thing. These entities are getting money from us. I think given where I'm at, I'm comfortable supporting it. But I think going forward, we're gonna have to be much more strict on what we're paying to both of these entities. I'm sorry, when I say support, I would support the budget as it is
Mhm.
and not cutting it.
Right.
Well, I wasn't suggesting we cut it. I was suggesting we level fund it.
Right? Any others? I mean, unless you want to make a motion, Molly? Yes.
If you're looking for places to cut.
Yeah, come up, identify yourself.
Well, wait a minute, are we
Nancy
finished?
Miles?
Are we finished with?
Oh, are you finished with your thing there?
Right now we are.
Travel. $14,000 for travel under the town clerk? What's that for? That's
We
a
have,
lot, that's a huge increase. Where are they going?
we have a town clerk, Millie McGinnis, who we're all very proud of, who is now the president of the New England Association of Town Clerks. And it is a job that is, the functions of that office are changing quite rapidly in terms of technological improvements, et cetera, and it requires a lot of off-island training.
For the position here or the position that she obtained?
No, it's not just Millie, it's for the
Yeah,
entire office.
Add
Yeah,
a
go
little
ahead.
detail. This is just from the town clerk's budget submittal. And I want to be clear that it covers not just the town clerk, but
Right.
the deputy clerk and the rest of the clerk's office staff who are going through a fair amount of training in order to make sure everyone's coming up to speed. And that includes attendance, again, different numbers depending on the function, Rhode Island Clerks Association conferences, probate judge meetings, New England Association of City and Town Clerks, the Municipal Clerks Regional Conference, the New England Clerks Institute, as well as virtual training. And one of the, this is just speaking for myself, one of the challenges of securing adequate training for your position when you're out on Block Island is that it requires travel, which is both expensive and time consuming. I think we talked about when we went through the budget that we were investing in travel in a number of departments in order to support that necessary training to bring some of our staff up to speed. So it is higher than historically, but it's a time in the department life where it's important. So.
And that includes not only the travel, but the registration for the conference and the lodging.
Right.
That's it.
Okay.
We actually did used to spend a significant amount of money on conferences, on sending people to various things, and it was I think it was helpful for the town finding out what was going on other places, what the people are doing, and I'm glad to see it's coming back. And we do have probably, I've mentioned this before, our clerk is a master municipal clerk. We've previously had certified municipal clerks, but Millie made that extra step.
So would it make, I mean, just because it reads alarmingly, would it make more sense to have travel as a travel line and then
Conference registration.
conference registration under professional development? Why do we have nothing under professional development? Is that a changing over of something?
It is. The professional development line was used by a previous manager to aggregate a lot of different types of training. This is specific traditionally to the clerks. It's in that administration town clerk section. The training and education line is actually where those registration fees are. The travel portion is the travel portion. So it is split, and all of those events that I listed are divided across the two lines depending on the cost of travel and the cost of registration. There's a little bit additional in the travel line beyond the clerks because that administration department does also cover the manager's office and the town council. So travel that might be related to the town manager, anything the town council might do, or if we're, for example, flying the solicitors out for a special meeting, those kinds of travel costs are also incorporated in that line.
Amy, can we, a line like professional development that no longer has any history, can we drop that? I think it's confusing.
I just must have missed that one.
Thank you.
Darn it. All right, from the council, are there any suggested changes?
I guess I just said that was a good question, and I wish we had more people asking questions that, because we don't think to explain things
Yeah.
that we already know.
Absolutely.
And thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry. Hi, Kim.
Didn't see you there.
This is just a clarification and general question. I was at a land trust meeting yesterday. There's a lot of talk about disc golf, and it was put forward that that was, although it's on land trust land, that it was a recreation department program. And I was wondering if there's any money in the budget for that project, whether it's to help with acquisition or maintaining the course or supplies, because there was confusion about who was carrying the ball on that project.
Go ahead, Amy. You want to?
So to my knowledge, it is not incorporated in the budget. It's an idea that developed sort of subsequent to that submittal coming in. There's a further context, which is especially around programs for the rec department. We traditionally do allow flexibility. If a program has offsetting revenue, we do tend to let the program expense flow through the budget as well, even though it may not have been explicitly budgeted for as a program, because you have the revenue and expense side. There's traditionally a little more flexibility in program design for recreation. That doesn't mean it won't go through all the other steps, but from a budget revenue and expense, the fact that it's not incorporated today doesn't mean it will be precluded from happening. Right there.
How is that going? Is there warmth from the land trust and others? Do people think that's a good idea?
Some people.
Yeah.
So-
Because the only thing I've seen it on land trust agendas, but I hadn't spoken with the people who are advocating for it.
I could add a tiny bit
Great.
here because the organizers came to the Lions Club meeting last week and
Oh, great.
my understanding, which this is my understanding, right, might be incorrect, but is that the land trust has approved the use of the land and that the people organizing it came to the Lions Club to ask if the Lions would be willing to fund the equipment. So I think they're looking for private donations to get the equipment up and running. You know, get it up and running, and they have had a donation from a local landscaper to clear the vegetation that needs to be cleared. Not more than what needs to be cleared, but so I think that is my understanding of where it stands right now.
I could add just a little.
Yes,
at the
please.
meeting Yesterday, which there was a lot of discussion. The land trust does seem to be in favor, but it's clearly not been approved. It will be needing to go through zoning for a special use application.
Oh, interesting.
And there are homeowners in the audience who are clearly concerned about that special use. So they asked the question whether or not the zoning was going to be the only place they were going to have to talk about whether, you know, the town's involvement, and it crossed my mind, I didn't mention it then, will they have a chance?
Well, whoever it is, have them contact, me or any of us, and I'd be happy to have them on an agenda to talk about what their plan is. I think is that what you're asking? Oh.
I just wanted to know if there was money in the budget.
No, but I mean, so that's what they're at. Well, let me just say this publicly. If somebody wants to come to a town council meeting, the advocates for this and talk to us about it, we're happy to hear it.
Right, I think they probably don't need to, they just need to go to zoning, because they own the land.
That's fine. And
So just the technical point is, it's not technically, it's clearly.
Okay, so that's why I was saying, like, my understanding might be really limited.
great. Thank you, Kim. Anything else? Any other changes, ideas, thoughts? Let's move on to number 2. Discuss and act on authorization of the town manager to submit a request to exceed property tax cap to the Rhode Island Division of Municipal Finance based on debt service increase for fiscal year 2025. Why are you making a face at me? What did I do wrong?
So can I ask really quickly, with the capital, do you really want to vote on it all at once, or do you want to go through each item and?
I'm happy to do it either way. I was just going pursuant to the agenda, which has us acting and adopting fourth after we do the caps.
Can I make a procedural suggestion then?
Yeah,
That if the council felt like they wanted to pick and choose from any of the tax cap override items, that should be done in adjustments to the line item budget, item number 1, so that all the things have moved and we have a preview of what the final budget looks like.
so I was under the impression that that was what we were just doing and what I was at, but if we need to not move on to number 2 and move on to, things that line items that people want changed, let's do that.
Don't we have to do the line items? Don't we have to change the budget before we do the authorization?
Yes.
Yes.
So if Molly, for example, wants to pick and choose from the override column, which was implied in wanting to do them one by one, then we should go back and talk about line items. So
I thought that was what I was asking, but
Okay, I
if
thought
I
you
didn't
moved on
make
to
that
number
clear,
2.
I'd be more than happy to make that clear. If there are changes, if anybody has any changes that they would like to make, now would be the time to make those motions.
Where do we end up with the North Light? I'm sorry.
The North Light is not in this year's capital spending.
So the 200,000 for the North Light would be out of here.
Right.
And then I'd like to clarify just for voters and maybe a little bit for myself too. So if we vote to have this go forward, right, it goes to the state. The state says yes or no about the override. And then all of this goes to the voters at financial town meeting.
Right.
At which point, if the voters want to, they can pick and choose on these items.
Mhm.
Okay, so I just want to make sure that everybody gets that even if this moves forward today, it's not the last crack at it. Like, absolutely, voters can get up and change it, right?
Mhm.
Okay.
And then just
I want to clarify that there's a
No,
lot
no,
of questions
those are
around
good
this.
questions.
It's a very, very big increase. And I don't know whether when I talk to people and explain that to them, I don't even think they think I'm serious. So it's a big increase. Okay.
So if I just follow, the debt service column in the middle, on that grid, that's an automatic, right? That's already, so we're really asking for the third column, those ancillary items, or no?
Right, yeah, we can't, that's a good question. We can't, the debt service is what it is.
Correct.
Yeah, so we bought it.
But we still
Right.
have to ask for the override for this.
Yes, but we still have to ask for the override. Yeah.
So, and I guess I was going to that override, when someone throws out 17% or whatever it is, that's factored in there, correct?
Yes, that's,
So that, which voters already approved. I just want to make sure for the audience, they understand we're stuck with that. What was it?
5.6%.
So we're stuck with the 5% increase because we already voted on that. So we're really talking about the 8.4, which is actually lower now because we pulled out the,
We reallocate.
No, but we
Oh,
added back
okay, yeah,
the
that's
full
right.
pump.
Sorry.
Yes,
okay, so it's still 8.4.
yes.
Okay, thank you.
I
Yes.
can I go first? I'm just a little uncomfortable with the way that you describe something, so I want to be really clear. The 5.6 debt service amount, we are obligated to pay. The need to do a tax override for that is not automatic.
Oh, that's good.
The town, at any of its authorization stages, could elect to cut that amount from other parts of the operating budget and stay within the 4% or make any other changes. Is that clear?
That's
Yeah.
very helpful. Thank you, Amy.
Okay.
It's, I really do. If you're shifting 200 essentially from the north light, which is in that column, I don't have it in front of me, is the fire equipment also in that column?
Yes, so Renee's question is, do the adjustments related to the North Light and the transfer station move into a different column than the fire equipment? No, those are all in the override related to growth, public safety, and climate resiliency. So those are in the same bucket that relate to the 8.4% additional override category, and all in capital.
Hi, David.
Question on the 80,400 in the override. Didn't we learn today that 20,400 of that number is operational?
Yes,
So you
some of
can't-
those are.
You can't talk about taking that line out because you got to leave the operational money somewhere.
Yeah. The voters could not authorize those funds, and we would have to identify an offsetting amount if it was the priority to keep those operational funds. Yes.
Thank you.
So that applies to the dredging as well. That is an operational line item, not a capital line.
Yep.
item.
Also, the community services.
Community support is sort of an in-between, yeah.
Doug.
Besides the budget line, can I ask a question about the income line? Lines?
Sure.
The paper said you've pretty much maxed out all the user fees. I don't know if that's true or not. I don't know if you're getting any of these, you can for bicycles or not. But I'm looking at the fire department, fire alarm reimbursement, $25,000 for answering fire alarms. Can those places be charged? So the town gets reimbursed for that cost?
I
Your
know,
fire alarm goes off 10 times and they have to respond. And, do you get that? Just
Mhm.
watch, because a lot of those are preventable. A lot of times it's workers making up dust and the fire department's got to go. So just questioning that item, and there might be others.
great. Amy, do you want to talk about that? Because I know it's,
Sure, I
Been
might need some
focused.
help on this one. The limit of my input is that, yes, there are provisions in the ordinance to collect for some of those, and the town is currently revising that ordinance, and that'll be becoming before the town council in short order. And that will increase the opportunity, I think, to draw offsetting revenue in a way that exists in the ordinance today, but is very hard to implement. So we're going to improve that. Is that fair to say?
thank you, Doug. Thank you, Amy.
Can I just go back and ask the communications, just to clarify? Are we leaving that as the existing person is going to train the person under? Like, I think, Creek, that's what you were articulating, but then you were also asking to cut the line. So are we leaving it as the person is training the next person, or did we throw that all out because of the cut?
I think that's what we'd hope. I'm sorry. Your question, Keith.
Not for me.
I thought that was the plan from the get-go, and you were just talking about the dollars.
I don't think it was the plan from the get-go. I think the plan from the get-go was to hire a new person.
Oh, I thought from the other night when we weren't gonna mention names.
So I think where we've ended up on this one that the funds available will be used for a compensation of the individual who's been currently volunteering, and that individual will be training another person. And also compensation of the person that they will be training.
Yeah, I thought that's what we talked about
Okay, so
the other night.
the money, the money in that line item is for both.
Correct.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify that because okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Desires to change line items? Judy?
Just want to, I realize this is on the resilience part, which is actually item number 3, and we're probably still on item number 2, but we seem to be ranging all around. I want to say thank you and acknowledge the reduction of the 200,000 for the North Light, reallocating how that will be funded. Really appreciate that it's no longer a request from the taxpayers to pay that. The 60,000 for the Graces Cove Road access is still in there. Is the when you ask for money for resilience, does that get folded in with the request for everything else? Is it like or is there a separate justification for the resilience piece? Or does it get
Talking about
folded
in
into
the-
the whole cap?
You talking about yes, Amy, I mean, I could
Yeah,
answer
I'm
it,
just,
but then you
I'm
get the
really
right-
worried that we can justify it in a way that, I understand the importance of it. I just want to make sure we're justifying it in a way that's palatable and appropriate for the taxpayers.
That's certainly our goal.
Yeah, yeah.
To have an appropriate justification. The entire override, all sections are submitted in a single document to the State Department of Administration. They will be aggregated, but I think there is a cover letter in addition to their checklists.
Right.
And that cover letter will give a little bit more context to each of the items that we're asking for.
Right.
So yes and no. The official submittal aggregates everything together, but we'll be providing additional context and information for each of them.
Also, is there a difference now in the cap that we're requesting since there's been stuff taken out? Like the 200,000 for the North
That
Light,
was-
are we asking
That
for
was into
less?
doing the pump.
Okay,
uh,
so we're just trading. So
yes.
it's still, okay, so this is still the same request. We're just moving it from one bin to another.
Right.
Okay, thank you. I really appreciate that. I wasn't clear on that. Thank you.
Yes. So, thanks.
Technically, we did do a reduction of the overall budget in the amount of the 5,893. It doesn't change the 4% number because of the rounding size.
Right.
So we have a total bottom line that is different today, but the 4%
Right.
is the same.
Yes, come up, John. Is it John?
So on the request to the state for the override, will there be a public hearing at the state level or is it just decided bureaucratic?
Go ahead, Amy. Amy is the.
Yeah, it's handled administratively at the state level. So they evaluate the criteria on their own. In terms of the public process, it does require a 4/5 majority of the town council for us to even submit that request for the state to consider. And it requires the approval of voters at financial town meeting. So they consider those two elements the public process.
So at the financial town meeting, will that be a separate motion at the beginning of the meeting? So people who want to oppose that override can do it, or do they have to wait through the entire meeting in terms of going through line by line?
How is that usually structured, Amy?
We've never structured it as a separate question, but given the complexity of the budget that we're all looking at today, I think We may not ask the question up front, but we'll certainly provide a very clear introduction to where and when people can make changes. And I think we all collectively need to be patient and flexible throughout that meeting to make sure that everyone's concerns are heard. Typically, it's the approval of the budget at the end that meets that state criteria of approval of the override because it's implicit in the adoption of the budget. But like I said, we may make it even more explicit this year.
Well, I would request that you make it not difficult for the taxpayers of this island to accept an override. You did put in an override a few years ago, did you not? And you got it.
Yes.
Yes. So this is now another override.
Yep.
So it would be useful, I think, for a democratic process to have the discussion of the override as a single item at the early part of the meeting so that people attending that meeting could reject it. And then line by line would have to be considered on the basis of a reduced budget.
So can I just interject here and ask Amy a question? Have you ever been to financial town meeting before?
No,
Okay, so.
I came here not to be involved in politics because I've been involved in politics at other levels.
But
But I've been urged to come here to speak for people who do not feel comfortable coming to a meeting like this, in part because of their skill level, in part because of their income level.
I want to ask you something.
So Amy, let me ask you a question. So the way that financial town meeting is formatted is budget by budget, but will this, the different items on the override, will they be listed individually or will that be like the voters just vote the whole enchilada down or just, do you understand what I'm saying? Like, how would that go?
Right. So
Amy, could I just back up on something before we get there? I want to ask Doug Michelle, do you remember when we did this way back in the 80s when this thing first came up?
Say no.
Yeah, I do because I think I thought we did the budget and then got to the end and then had the override because you have to if items were taken out through the course of the budget process, the total changes before you get to the end.
Yeah, I believe so, because there was one year, it was the first night of 4, and someone made a motion just to cut 10% from the budget. A town solicitor ruled that was an invalid motion because it said you should go through the budget and go as your process goes, not just walk up and say we're cutting X percent.
God, I'd forgotten that. Thank you.
And as a reminder, and I was part of it, so I was responsible too, that back in the 80s, you had at least 4 years in a row of double-digit tax increases because the town was experiencing unprecedented growth in the services it had to provide. And when we got up to 91, 92, we ended up with a 0% property tax increase. So once we got to a certain stage, we got caught up, the increases stopped. And kind of that's what you're into right now. All of a sudden, your infrastructure is the needs that you need are tremendous. And if you don't meet these needs, stuff's going to fall apart. Your water company needs something big. The fire station needs something big. The broadband, we need it. And if you look at what you saved by having the broadband, it will pay for your tax increase for that broadband. You figure how much you save between what you paid before for TV and phone and internet, and your savings will probably pay for that bond issue for yourself. But it's a tough period right now. And you got things that aren't even here yet. You don't have the school budget yet. I mean, the school construction, you don't have the fire department construction, and those are big nuts.
Yes.
It's just, you kind of shake your head and you kind of say, what can we do? And you do as much as you can. The only thing you can tell the voters, and my last piece of advice is, I always looked at a budget as wants and needs. What do you need and what do you want? And wants are like extras. And if you can look at this budget and say, listen, there are no wants in here. These are all needs. We really feel they're all justified. Then you can make that case to the voters.
Yep.
So.
Well
that's all I
put,
can
Doug.
say.
Thank you. Amy, do you remember Molly's question? Because I don't want to skip over.
I'm gonna try. So as we go through the budget, and for those who haven't been there, we discuss each department, each expenditure department individually, and the votes are on each department expenditure. So administration, finance, police, harbors. And in the discussion and final vote of each of those departments, there can be motions from the floor to make amendments on that department. The majority, not all, but the majority of those items in the override category are in capital. And so most of the discussion would be on the capital side. When we got to that department, a motion from the floor to eliminate the fire pump. And we would take a vote on that as a group and see whether that item stayed or did not stay. It is implicit, and this will be the part that we need to reiterate, that if it is approved and stays in the budget, it would have to come with that tax override. Now, technically, the tax override is a separate vote, but they're tied together. And so when we go through the line items for capital in particular, if you're not in favor of the override, then we need to figure out a budget that brings us down low enough that we don't need the override. So that's the focus of the mechanics, if that's clear. But I guess I do want to say, if the last thing we want at a financial town meeting is for people to get confused or hung up with the procedural aspects. And so either before or that evening, if there are questions about how do I do this thing I want to do, please reach out, because we're, you know, nobody should not take the action they want because they don't know how.
Right.
So that's really important.
Molly, did that answer your question?
Oh, yeah, I mean,
Okay,
I'm
I just
actually
want, I
not
just want to,
asking the question for me. Somebody texted me asking, but I mean, yeah, financial town meeting, but I mean, so whoever you're talking to that doesn't like to go to the meetings, they have to come to that meeting because you only get to vote if you're there. So you need to check in with the canvassers and, you know, there's a voter seating section, there's a non-voter seating section. Everyone should go to financial town meeting. And it's really long and it's really boring and you should bring your knitting and, you know, everybody should be at financial town meeting because otherwise you're letting other people make the decisions for you.
Yep.
And one of the things that I remember, Doug and Kim and I, Nancy, and remember these crazy meetings we used to have that went on for nights that were, we don't want to go back there, but it's been very dispiriting the last several years where people just don't ask anything.
except for last year.
Notice what happened.
Hold on, Bob.
Oh, I'm thinking of the main financial town meeting. The,
Oh, yeah. Oh, there was more than one last year.
Stop. I was gonna say something important.
Sorry.
Okay, I know what it was. When the charter revision came through, and I'm gonna say this every chance I have a microphone, I'm gonna annoy the heck out of people, I don't care. I'm old, I can do it. The number of people who voted in favor of including a line in our charter that said it's the responsibility, I think, of people to go to financial town meeting. The number of people who voted for that were greater than the number of people who showed up. Because I wrote all the numbers down because I knew that was going to happen, so I could complain
Yes.
later.
John, come on up. Oh, David, do you mind just, wait one sec, David. Sorry.
I
didn't see.
understand the distinction between wants and needs. But there are a lot of people on this island who did not get a 17.45% increase in their income in the past year.
Sure.
And you need to take that into account. Now, the structure of the financial town meeting is such that it's difficult to eliminate the override. And you should make that open and accessible by putting that at the beginning of the meeting in a single vote. Otherwise, you risk people rejecting the entire budget. It is your job, and you have done a very good job of deciding what needs to be cut and not needs to be cut. And the people, at least I'm speaking to, and who are speaking to me, don't want to make that decision. They want you to make that decision, but they want you to live within the existing budget.
Thank you. David?
She was quiet about that when we voted for bonding.
Just to clarify, again, the way the meeting's gonna operate. So typically the department budgets are discussed first when we get to the budgets. So one would assume that the community service budget, and also just using two examples, the harbors department, the fire department, and not the fire department, the harbors department and the community service. What's the community line?
Community support.
Community support, thank you. Those are approved. If the override is not approved in support, the taxpayers need to know that the previously approved fire department budget will need to have an additional 39,500 taken out of it, because that's not capital. Only the fire equipment in the is capital.
Yes.
Similarly, with the dredging, that is not capital. That I think Mary Ann said earlier, that was operational. So that would have to come out of the budget as well, correct? And the
Yes.
public needs to understand
I
that
think it's really helpful,
as
David. Yes.
every department is being discussed.
Yes,
Thank you.
Small thing.
absolutely.
For those who feel strongly about the sequence and the structure of the meeting, we're going to be talking about the warrant in 2 weeks. And so that provides the context
Wonderful.
in the
Yeah,
agenda.
great point.
It's when we
Thank
talk
you.
about that.
But I think everybody really needs to think about this and how the process goes and what's going to work and how it, the different possibilities. Because I don't think any way of this happening is as clean as it might be thought.
Okay.
And I think we do have to accept the reality that the debt service override is what, 5.6, Amy? And that's something that was voted previously. That's a full faith and credit of the town of New Shoreham that was voted by financial town meeting.
Right. Are there any other changes, line item changes, et cetera? Amy, you're comfortable moving on? All right, we're going to discuss and act on an authorization of the town manager to submit a request to exceed property tax cap to Rhode Island Division of Municipal Finance based on debt service increase for FY 25. I think we've talked about this quite a bit this afternoon, but this is for the broadband bond issue. Is there a motion? Anybody want to make?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? If not, all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. Anything before we move on?
We should have had some discussion. My fault. This was not something that I think any one of us has taken lightly or has done without a great deal of thought. I'm not going to repeat what Doug said because he said it so well, but that's very much where I'm coming from. I looked at this, the first time I looked at this, I said, no way in God's green earth. And then I looked at what happens, and not simply the cost of putting things off that everyone talks about, that it will cost more next year to do the same project, but the cost of borrowing, the cost of interest, the cost of structuring debt, what we have upcoming. You have to have a long program here. And I think we're getting back to that. Thank you.
Thank you. Item 3, discuss and act on an authorization of the town manager to submit a request to exceed property tax cap to Rhode Island Division of Municipal Finance and the Rhode Island Auditor General based on substantial tax base growth for FY25.
So
Is there a second? Is there discussion? Not all those in favor indicate by saying aye. Oh, I didn't see, I'm sorry, I didn't see that she had gone. I was paying attention to my agenda. Sorry about that.
The north lights move.
Yeah, the north light is out. Yes, yeah. So that
Or reality.
reallocated, yeah. Yes. Do you want me to make those? That's a really good point, Doug. I assumed that was directional. We did vote on it though. Right?
Can't vote on the line item change.
Oh, okay.
So
Oh, thank you, Millie. I'm sorry. Yeah.
So.
All right. You would, yeah, withdraw your motion, please, if you don't mind, Neil. And if there's no objection, I'd like to go back to item number 1. We had a proposal to take the $200,000 for the north light out of this column to increase the fire equipment to buy the pump to $600,000, correct?
The motion,
I think you can take the motion together. Take a motion to take 200, reduce the North Light budget by.
I was trying to
200,000,
walk through that for people before we got to a motion.
and then the 50,000 out of the transfer station.
So we're moving fire equipment to 600.
Correct.
We are removing North Light. And we are taking $50,000 out of the transfer station.
Correct.
Can I have a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Is there a second? Is there discussion? Not all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Ayes have it. Millie, thank you so much. And Doug, thank you very much for, I'm still learning. Now let's go back to item number 3, discuss and act on authorization of the town manager to submit a request to exceed property tax cap to Rhode Island Division of Municipal Finance and the Rhode Island Auditor General based on substantial tax-based growth for FY25.
So moved.
Is there a second? Is there any discussion? Tristan? I wasn't sure if your light just went on. If there's no discussion, all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Is that sufficient to say it was 4/5? Okay. Item number 4, act to adopt the Town of New Shoreham FY 2025 budget for submission to the financial town meeting. Is there a motion?
That's saying,
The amount.
including
As
the changes previously discussed.
Sure. Yes, including the changes previously discussed.
In the total amount of $20,330,312.
Can I just borrow your pen for a second? 20 million.
330,312.
In the amount of $20,330,312.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there discussion? If not, all those in favor indicate by saying aye. Opposed, no. Ayes have it. Item number 5, Amy and Amy, discuss homestead tax exemption. I don't know whether that's to you or to Mariana. Sorry, I was just being flippant. Thank you. Don't leave, anybody. This is an important part of the conversation. we have some challenges here, so pay attention. please.
Yeah, so when we left off as a group, we were looking at a comparison of what some of the other communities do in terms of relief for their residents. And there are a number of communities that have different structures, and then talked about some of the priorities that might be important for New Shoreham when we go through this exercise. And some of the things we identified, and I'm looking at the bottom of the memo from last week, would be that it's owner occupied, residential, the principal residence of the owner. We talked about some other things like what would happen if you had a year-round tenant? Is there opportunity to use that structure to encourage owners to rent year-round, presumably at a reasonable rate? And then one of the other areas that is a point of concern is mixed-use properties, and then multi-unit sort of activities, which could be a combination of seasonal rentals, short-term rentals, year-round rentals. How do you deal with all of those things? And so we went off over the last few days and tried to distill that down into an ordinance with a goal of implementing something this tax year, to align with the budget that just went forward. And the reality is that in order to do something, I'm going to skip right to the end. In order to do something this year, we would need to work within a very narrow band of a homestead exemption. And according to the statutes that exist today, that would mean that they need to be owner occupied, which means we couldn't today provide accommodation for a year-round lease to a resident. And it would not allow for.
Sorry, can you just clarify? So we can't do it because the way the current ordinances for the town read, or something with the state?
Both.
Okay,
I'll walk you all the way to the conclusion. And one of the other areas that's difficult to implement in this short time frame is anything dealing with mixed use. And so there is a draft homestead exemption ordinance for New Shoreham up on the table. And again, this is sort of the scale that we could implement this year. It's very straightforward. It has those narrow bands. It mirrors other homestead exemptions in the state. In order to tackle those broader situations that we heard from the discussion might be more aligned with our ultimate goals for encouraging year-round residency and making sure that we're keeping that affordable, the implementation of that and the discussion of it is too big to tackle on the time frame we need to get the bills out. There are some good examples. Newport is one that has developed some classes of property that we may want to consider mirroring, and some language about allowing residential exemptions when somebody has a year-round lease. But those are pretty complex. And so both the hearing and discussion of the ordinance, which we need to do, and the structures we would need on the finance and assessing end to implement those could not be ready for this year. So that's kind of the choice before us over the next few weeks.
Can I ask sorry to interrupt, but I guess in order for me to wrap my mind around this, I would need to make sure that we and the community were clear that this was the intention that I would have, is that this is a two-step process. That there would be the near term doing what we can with the commitment to, for example, having a more nuanced property tax system that, for example, accounted, gave an advantage or where you got a benefit, not an advantage, a benefit for having, say, a 513 that was rented year round, or if you were a commercial property that had apartments associated with it for year-round employees. I mean, that is stuff that we want to advantage, it seems to me. And I think one of the things I'd like to have some confidence about is whether you and Mary Ann feel like it's something that we could accomplish in a year. I mean, in other words, if we had time, that remains doable. We're talking about deadlines and getting tax bills out and all that, and an inability to do that over the course of 90 days, or whatever, however many days it is. But that doesn't mean that we won't have the capacity to do it as phase two of this.
And keep in mind, the other person is, Amy and I have worked on this. Keith has been involved a little bit, but the other person who's been very instrumental in bringing us to where we are now is the town solicitor. So he's been very much involved with this, and he also will be working with us throughout the year. And we've started some preliminary discussion as to how we go forward next steps. And we're all in agreement, the three of us, a more narrow homestead exemption is the way to go with the timeline that we're dealing with.
Okay, but the question I was asking is whether we have confidence that we can accomplish a two-step approach to this, that one is occurring with this budget year, and then we have the time and authority to do what we need to do in the second year.
Yeah,
so
so I'm
in
gonna
other words,
answer
for
that
this financial
myself.
town meeting,
Yes.
we might do this, and for the next financial town meeting or the next ordinance adoption process that we go through, it wouldn't be FTM. We have the resources, the bandwidth, et cetera.
I do think that getting to step two is very achievable with the structures that we have in place today within the next year.
Right.
And that's something I wouldn't necessarily have said a couple days ago, but we've worked through enough of the mechanics of the ordinances and the enabling legislation that I am pretty confident that we can fit existing models from other communities into the bounds of the law in a way that works for us.
I see. Thank you, Amy. There questions for Amy? This is.
So what we're talking about is phase one would be that if you are a year-round homeowner who lives in your home year-round on Block Island, you would get a tax exemption applied to your tax bill.
Mhm.
Okay. And step two would be where we find a clear path for if I am a homeowner who provides housing for someone here. So let's say I'm a homeowner who has a 513 on my property, a tax break for providing year-round housing for someone else. So for a unit that is not owner occupied, but is occupied year-round. Is that would be in our step two.
So those are the kinds of questions that we will be able to ask ourselves about whether we want to adopt. So yes.
Okay.
I'm not going to say we'll all agree to all of the scenarios, but with enough time, we can put the language together that represents each of those, and we can evaluate them as to whether or not we want to extend a more favorable tax rate to those properties.
Okay. And so step one, to go back again and clarify, is step one is just owner occupied year-round dwelling unit.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
With proper proof of.
Yeah, and so that draft ordinance does outline some examples of what owners would need to provide in order to be eligible for the exemption. And it is fairly straightforward in that you need to demonstrate that it's your primary residence. You need to have a driver's license that has your Block Island address. You need to be a registered voter in the town of New Shoreham. The property needs to be titled in your name or in a trust that you're the beneficiary of. And all of those are again, pretty direct, pretty straightforward. It narrows our population a fair amount. I did do a little bit of work earlier And of the 1,200 single-family dwellings that we have, about 425 use a Block Island mailing address for their taxes. Doesn't mean they're going to be eligible, but it starts to put a ceiling on what that population looks like, just to understand what the scale is. So it certainly can't be more than that, but it will be less.
And just to be clear, again, this is an ordinance that will follow the usual path and we will have a hearing on it. And the public will have an opportunity to hear it, see it. Right?
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely.
And we'll hash out details and all that, just as usual.
Yeah, and you know, one of the key things that's not in the draft that is available today is what that exemption amount is. You know, that's going to be a topic of discussion, and it's something we need to be doing some background analysis on in the assessing office to help you put some boundaries around those exemptions, and we need to talk about what the right amount is.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I think is going to be helpful for everybody, which is almost as you have in the as we have in the narrative, sort of what the scenarios look like in, you know, in relative real terms. You know, that will be helpful. Doug, did you have a question? Saw your hand go up.
Yeah, based on what Molly said. So number C is used for residential purposes and a dwelling containing not more than 5 units in which at least 1 unit is owner occupied. But if you have a house that's owner occupied year round and you have a 513, which is occupied year round, they don't get it. According to what you said.
And that is the trickiness of this really narrow homestead exemption, that expanding the language to incorporate that concept and other ones that we think we want to favor is not something we can bite off in this year. And
can I ask a question about
but if I had a house and I had 5 units in it, then I would get the exemption. But because the building is separate, I wouldn't. Unless I build a walkway and tell you it's one building. It's kind of like Molly's point. It doesn't make sense in that section. Because the 513s we have means everybody who has a 513 is not getting this. It's automatically out this year.
And
if you have something else in your property that you're renting.
actually, the 513, if your primary is owner occupied, that is something we can accommodate.
Yes,
So
that was what I thought.
if you have a single family dwelling and you live here year round in the primary house and you have a 513, that would qualify. Because the 513 is actually not a second unit, it's an accessory. So that qualifies. What doesn't qualify under this would be your single family dwelling where you are not a year-round resident. You only have the 513. That does not qualify.
And we may decide as a matter of policy at some point that in order to get people to do 513s, we may want to make them eligible, you know? But we can't do that in this draft. That was how I understood that. I all of a sudden was, wait a second. Did I see someone back there? Was that you, David, who had your hand up? Okay.
So in item number 3, the question I have is with regard to, and it may or may not be covered under item 3, is with regard to, are we talking about an individual parcel of land? The 513 situation, because it's an accessory, typically is within one lot record.
Yes.
Suppose people own multiple lots of record. Do they get it? And they all, let's see, I guess you can only live in one of them, is that right? But if the only other, so you can get the exemption with the current frame in step 1, you can get the exemption on the house you live in. But if you own a second lot, have a second lot of record with a house that's rented year round, that one wouldn't be eligible
Correct, under this.
You gotta pick which mansion you want to live in.
I only have one. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
But
That's,
the
that's
idea
that's
could
helpful.
be in year two, that might qualify, that second house could qualify if you have a lease with a full-time year-round.
That is
Yes.
something we
Yeah.
could consider under
Right.
So
step
we
two.
talked on it.
Agreed.
I think that's really important.
Agreed. So, the step one could be more restrictive or less restrictive than desired, than council would desire, based on the fact that we haven't crafted step two yet.
Right.
Some people could be eligible and become ineligible to step two.
Probably not.
I think that's unlikely.
That's not our intent.
I think the broad range of mixed use on Block Island covers a lot of territory.
Yeah, that's fair.
But there's no time to figure it out.
Yes. So that'd be the only thing that I would ask for is, to the extent that it's possible, and believe me, I say that advisedly because I know how the math changes so much and is so challenging, but scenarios would be helpful, I think. I think that helps people to understand. Millie, what do we have to do here? Should we, I see it's not on our agenda, but so we have to schedule this for public hearing? And we will be doing that on Monday? Or
You have a meeting on Wednesday.
Wednesday?
I'm not sure if this is going to be ready for that meeting. It will be ready to set public hearing date.
We also have a meeting on the 24th.
We do.
So I would suggest that we take next week, the 17th, to do some more discussion
Okay,
and
great.
then set the public hearing date on the 24th.
Terrific. That's great. I just wanted to make sure that we didn't miss a week and then cause all kinds of problems in the finance department.
So just to be clear, and I know there's a procedural step we have to do. Will this be at the point for the town meeting? My understanding is no, correct?
By the time we get to financial town meeting, we should have set the public hearing with a draft ordinance. So it won't have been adopted, but it will be out for
Just for
consideration.
people to know.
Yeah, it's a good question. David?
So presumably the draft that you would be receiving next week to set a public hearing for would have include some sort of one-year mechanism for allowing people to apply for what fiscal year 25, correct?
Yes, I drafted that. It just we didn't put it in. So minor details, but yes, we
There
do
you have
need some special language around implementation for the first year. Thank you.
Any other questions? This is really helpful. No. Thank you, Amy. Thank you, Marianne. Thank you, James.
I'll just quickly ask you, so if we discuss this on the 24th, when are we looking? Would that be the date we vote on it too? We
No.
would hear it and vote on it in the same date?
Setting a public hearing date, the 24th of April.
Yeah, you would be setting the public hearing date on the 24th. And that would be at least 3 weeks out.
Okay,
And so that would mean hearing on
maybe the 15th.
it looks like June to me.
May 22nd?
May 22nd is not a meeting date, but
Oh.
we can make it one. It's, you have, the regular meeting is the 15th?
Mhm.
Yeah, that doesn't.
It actually might be nice that it's a special meeting because then depending on
We can certainly,
interest,
yeah,
there's
set
enough
a
time.
special-
to
Yeah,
discuss.
I agree with that, Neil.
Not a bad thought.
But in any case, it will be after financial town meeting.
Correct.
Okay.
But the ordinance will be drafted and available for
Right.
people, I think is important.
Right.
Yeah.
I
would
just want to
not,
make sure people
Yeah.
understand that, like, the process, you know,
Yeah.
because sounds like newer people to the process, but you want to know what it is.
Yep.
yeah, and I'd be hesitant to accelerate the posting to next week. I think we need to talk about it more.
We're in.
So, okay.
Yeah.
It's always a mistake.
Any other questions, thoughts, et cetera? Item 6, reallocation of 37,000 from capital Old Harbor utilities to dredging Old Harbor dock area, and awarding an emergency dredging contract to A Transu Corp for $63,000. Somebody wanted,
Yeah, I can start. So what has happened is we, did, send out an RFP for a, dredging. The bid came in about $836,000, significantly more than what we had budgeted. The dredging opportunity, based on the permit we had, was through January 31st, 2024. We then proceeded to submit a, request for an emergency permit. The harbor staff, she not here? Oh, there she is. Harbor, Kate had submitted, working with our engineer to submit an emergency permit. We did receive that emergency permit. The window to dredge is very limited. They gave us about a little over 30 days, more like almost 6 weeks to do, which really doesn't afford us the opportunity to go out to bid on this. We had to get Army Corps and also CRMC, and they both agreed to do that. Bain Transo has agreed to remove 3,500 yards of dredged material located at Old Harbor. The estimated cost is $36,000. There's two prongs to this: the approval of the bid and also the funding sources. Currently, $26,000 remains in the dredging budget. Additional funds may be secured. The $37,000 uncommitted balance from the capital Old Harbor utilities, and finally, and another 8,000 with the electrical pedestal. So we're looking to approve the bid for Transo and also the moving of the funds. Amy, do they need to vote on reallocating of those funds? Yes.
yes.
Okay.
Before we get to questions, I just wanted to say, Kate, I really appreciate how dogged you've been about this. I know this has been a source of stress and concern, and what you and Marianne and others have been able to pull off here by getting that special permission through the Army Corps, et cetera, has really been a wonderful piece of work. So thank you.
Where's the, where are the dredge spoils gonna go? I'm good, thanks.
So first we need a motion to, oh, sorry. Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were leaving.
No, I was just gonna answer Martha's question. This is a land-based dredging with an excavator right on the beach, right around the bait dock there. They will load trucks, it's about 3,500 yards of sand. Load the trucks. It's going to be trucked to Corn Neck Road by the revetment. We're going to work from the north, working our way south. They dump in the road, that one lane, the northbound lane. The road crew is going to use the loader to push up over and repair the revetment, and any excess will make its way down to the beach. And it should take about 4 days rest.
Terrific. Thank you,
When you
Mike.
use the fancy word revetment, I don't know what that means. Is
The
that being
revetment is
by
where the stairs
bed?
are. Yep, exactly, right across where the 3 sets of stairs are.
Okay.
And after that, we're gonna work with Kim Gaffett again, like we have in the years past, and plant the grass on there.
Just nod your head and say, oh yes, revetment.
So again, what we're doing is we're just swapping buckets for the 37. It's already in the budget, it's the current year budget. The additional 26 needed for the bid is coming from where? Which is already budgeted. So this is literally just swapping buckets. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Can I ask Mike a question? 3,350 cubic yards of sand. How much sand is that? Like, would it fill this room or
40 truckloads? I think
40
that's,
truck? Okay.
yeah. Yeah.
Okay,
I
thanks.
recall it.
I don't have any vision on that. Okay, thank you.
course, it depends on how big a truck you're using.
Mike, is that max too? 3,500 max, not to exceed? Okay, all right, thanks.
So first, we would need a motion to approve the reallocation of the $37,000 from the capital Old Harbor Utilities to dredging Old Harbor Dock area. Is there a second? Any discussion? All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
And then we would have to approve an emergency award of the contract to A-Transu for $63,000. Is there a motion?
So can I just
Yes.
ask, so again, I
Yeah.
don't understand the bidding process. I know timing was short here, but often we see stuff with only one bid and we're going with it. So there is no one else that would want to do this work and
So, Transu is a known entity on the island and he's also a bidder for some of the other stuff we work with. So we did approach him and he said he is available to get this work done in the timetable we did. We did go out early for bid in the fall and the bid came in at $836,000.
okay. And so that was an off-island.
Right. And we're allowed under the state statute for emergency, and this clearly falls under the emergency with the timing and also safety of the basin there.
And he has done this. He's familiar with the harbor.
So can I have a motion to that effect? Emergency award and emergency dredging contract to A-Transu for $63,000. Is there a second? All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Ayes have it. Can I have a motion to adjourn, please? Oh, sorry, Kim.
May I make just a comment based on some of the conversation today?
Please.
All right, I just wanted to say, first of all, very hard budget, big numbers as we've already discussed. So I appreciate all the work that's been done by all of you, by Amy, of course, town manager, everybody who's done this to bring forward what you think is the best case, the best budget for the town of New Shore. That's your job to bring it forward, but it is our budget. It's the budget of the people.
Yes.
And it's not your job to decide what we are going to choose for our priorities. So it's I'm
Right.
really passionate about financial town meeting as an
Yes.
entity. It's very important that people show up and very important that we, as a community, realize that's our budget. It's not your budget.
Yes.
But thank you for putting together a budget that you think is the best that we can do this year.
Thank you, Kim. Really appreciate that. Thank you. So we have a motion to adjourn. All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Opposed, no. We're adjourned. Thanks, man.